Good morning, everyone. This is Gwen Sherwood, and I am delighted to be with you this morning, or whatever time zone you may happen to be in, because I believe we're going around the world. And this presentation is Stepping Stones to Leadership, and we're going to be sharing with you information on international leadership opportunities for our organization, Sigma Theta Tau, the Honor Society for Nursing, for the years 2021 to 2023. I am so delighted that this morning, coming from England, is Elizabeth Rosser, who is one of the members of the Leadership Succession Committee, and we will both be sharing with you some information about the process.
Hi.
For some reason now, my screen is not advancing, so I'm going to ask Noelle to help me here. We practiced and it worked perfectly. All of you are familiar now with the vagaries of virtual presentations. Here are our objectives of what we're going to be covering this morning. We'll be going through purpose, time commitment, roles and responsibilities so that you'll be familiar with the elected leadership positions for the 2021 ballot. We'll talk about the process and the mentoring possibilities for nomination to the ballot and look at candidate qualification, some tips, and some of the procedures. We'll also clarify some of the expectations for people who are nominated and are on the ballot. I would like now to introduce the committee, and again, there we go. The 2019-2021 Leadership Succession Committee. I am in my second term and I chair the committee, and working with us are Pauline Anderson Johnson from Jamaica. We have Diana Lynn Baptiste from the USA, Kay Ru Chow from Taiwan, Teresa Barry Holquist from the US, and Monina Hernandez from New Zealand, Peggy Jenkins from the USA, Bev Regal from the USA, Elizabeth Rosser, who is with us this morning from the United Kingdom, Davida Stallings from the USA, and we are delighted that our board liaison is Juanita Mercedes Gutierrez Valverde from Mexico. So we are quite an international group. The Leadership Succession Committee is looking for the next ballot nominees who are committed to leadership, scholarship, and service. And that includes looking across the globe where we have members in all regions, of course. The time is now to begin to step forward and think about, and we want to help explore where the leadership path can take you and the volunteer opportunities that are available within Sigma. So we are inviting all active members to consider if you are ready for nomination for some of these elected positions. The main qualification being an active member of Sigma Theta Tau. So we want to be very clear that there is no requirement for years of experience. There is no specific degree, no specific position of work setting, leadership role, or chapter endorsement. It is being an active member. We want to point out that more than half of our members are staff nurses holding clinical positions, and also that Sigma really benefits from new generations of nurse leaders, as well as having the wisdom of experienced nurses. So there is no qualification for how many years of service. The sustainability, in fact, of Sigma depends on having a ballot that represents nursing across the globe. As a global organization, it is absolutely imperative that we encourage international participation and diverse perspectives. So think about the leadership path and how chapters can help with covering convention costs for candidates. That is one of the questions that we get because we encourage attendance at the biennial convention. And for some of the people on the ballot, chapters have been quite important in helping with some of the costs. Time expectations vary according to the position, and we'll go through that this morning in the presentation. Especially now that we have been in the midst of this pandemic, Sigma provides various technologies for convenient communication. So the majority of the business, even before the pandemic, was done virtually. And of course, now we are all working virtually. For the board of directors meetings, when it is possible to have face-to-face meetings, Sigma covers the cost of the board of directors, but most other positions do not involve travel. The 2021 ballot will look something like this. We will have 78 places on the ballot. We try to have 2 nominees for every position. There are various reasons for having 2 nominees that come from looking at the bylaws and advice from our parliamentarian. For president-elect, the president-elect serves 2 terms and then moves into the president role. Vice president is a 2-year term and can be renominated for a 2nd term. Secretary is a 4-year term of service, and let me point out, we stagger secretary and treasurer. So last biennium, we elected a treasurer. So in the coming biennium, we will elect a secretary. We will elect directors at large who serve 4-year terms of service, and I believe it is 3 positions on the ballot. The Regional Chapters Coordinating Committee chair is a 2-year term of service, and of course, they chair the Regional Chapter Coordinating Committee. The Leadership Succession Committee serves either we'll have 4 people elected to 2-year terms and 3 people elected to 4-year terms. And that variance allows us to always have some experienced committee meetings. So it allows us to vary the rotation off. And likewise with the governance committee, there will be 3 people elected to 2-year terms and 2 people elected to 4-year terms. And then we have regional chapter coordinators who form the Regional Chapters Coordinating Committee, and that covers a coordinator for Africa, Asia, Europe, Latin America / Caribbean, the Middle East, Oceania, and 15 North America regions, and they each will serve 2-year terms and can be re-elected for a 2nd term. So I know that was a lot of information there. We are seeking active, experienced, service-ready Sigma members to lead our organization in the next biennium. And Rick Ricciardi, who is our current president, has a presidential platform of Infused Joy, which has been a very fortuitous platform for us during this time of pandemic. And I think when we think about joy, we really do need to consider what our response is to how we serve the organization and consider how you can be a part of the leadership path. So we'll go through some of the characteristics that we're looking for the elected leaders and the composition of the board of directors, roles and responsibilities, and then we'll, towards the end, go through stepping stones to leadership and some tips for you as you prepare. So let's think about some of the characteristics and the skills for any elected position for the ballot. We are looking for those who can demonstrate an understanding of Sigma's mission, values, and priorities. People who can conduct, facilitate, and participate in diverse groups effectively, demonstrate verbal and written ability to be a spokesperson and an ambassador, because we do reach across the world and cooperate with many different groups. people who can demonstrate problem solving and policy governance experience, who are willing to invest time to meet the obligations of office, who can participate in and pursue philanthropy, that is the charity, the giving to benefit Sigma, able to provide fiscal oversight for investments and audits relative to the position, because that does shift with whichever position you're in, and to be able to work cooperatively with the chief executive officer of Sigma, the board of directors, and other constituents. And lastly, English is our official language, so elected positions must be able to communicate in fluent spoken and written English. So now we will look at who makes up the board of directors and the executive committee, because we have elected positions who are part of the board of directors and those who are not part of the board of directors. So here is the board of directors. We have the, of course, the president, but will be elected a president-elect, the vice president, the treasurer, and the secretary. And they are in blue ink because they make up the executive committee. And then the directors at large and the regional chapters coordinating committee chair are also part of the board of directors. But the executive committee has separate roles and responsibilities, the ones in the blue. And now Elizabeth is going to begin to share with us some of the expectations of board members. She has just rotated off in the previous biennium from serving on the board of directors, and so has direct experience. Elizabeth?
Yes, thank you, Gwen. Okay, so if you're fortunate enough to be elected onto the board, then you would be expected to prepare for the board meetings, to attend and participate in the board meetings and conference calls. You'd be expected to participate in Sigma conferences that are held throughout the year, the biennial convention, and other programs. You'll be expected to work with Sigma's Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Liz Madigan, to achieve the aims of the organisation and to serve as representative and or liaison to board committees, subcommittees, advisory councils and task forces. So in fact, you will have a really good overview of the functioning of the organisation. You'd be expected, even although you might disagree with some of the discussions, and it's always good to have healthy discussions, you would eventually be expected to support majority decisions. You'd be expected to respect the interests of all the people served by the organisation. That is, people, all the members throughout the world, and of course to maintain confidentiality of sensitive information. So if you're elected onto the Sigma Board of Directors, this is the purpose and roles and responsibilities of those roles. So the purpose is to manage Sigma business and the corporate affairs and oversee Sigma, its subsidiaries, committees, advisory council and task forces. So in essence, as a member of the board of directors, you are directly responsible, along with the director, to the board, to run the organization. Your roles and responsibilities would be to serve on the board committees and as liaison to other committees, advisory councils and task forces. You'd be expected to represent Sigma at conferences, chapter events, inductions, and occasionally chapter chartering ceremonies as is required of you. You would be expected to participate in about 5 on-site meetings in Indianapolis, and these would be supported by the organization. There's generally about 3 meetings throughout the year, each year, one at the biennial convention at the outset when you're elected, and another at when you finish your term at the biennial convention at the other end. You would be expected to participate in scheduled conference calls, and there are quite about these occur about once a month, and there's about 2 to 3 hours preparation time for these meetings and calls. And you would be expected to provide strategic direction in collaboration with the Chief Executive Officer. So the responsibility for the President-elect and the Vice President. The President-elect is to learn the role of the President. So those 2 years leading up to or as President-elect, you would be expected to learn the role of what the President does, so that you would be able to step into that role of President at the next biennium. And you'd be expected to represent Sigma and the President as needed. The Vice President performs the duties of the President in his or her absence and succeeds to President if the President vacates the office during the term. It's very unusual, but it may be that due to illness or extraordinary circumstances that occurs, and so you were expected to step into that role until the House of Delegates meets. The role of the Treasurer and Secretary. The roles and responsibilities. For Secretary, you'd be expected to take the minutes of the board meeting, ensure their accuracy of the board meetings. You'd be expected to file reports to the membership on behalf of the Board of Directors, and you would chair the Resolutions Advisory Council and present resolutions to the House of Delegates. The Secretary also establishes the quorum for the House of Delegates, prepares official House of Delegates record, and also follows up with official communication. The Treasurer, on the other hand, deals with all that is, as you would expect, the finances of the board deals with. So you'd be expected to chair the Corporate Audit and Accountability Committee, and I was on that for the last 2 years, and you get amazing insight and are expected to make decisions about the financial side of the organisation. You'd be expected as Treasurer to review and monitor the utilisation of Sigma financial resources, review the financial statements with the Board of Directors, and you would advise the board regarding finances, budget approval, budget amendments, and financial policy. And you'd present a biennial budget and finance report to the House of Delegates. So as a Director of Large, when I have been a Director of Large for the last 4 years, and I was expected to provide expertise in policy governance and strategic direction. I was expected to deliberate issues before the board and engage in decision making beneficial to the whole of Sigma. It is so insightful to be a board of director and really understand the functioning of the organisation. And I was expected to prepare for and actively participate in board meetings, in calls, in the biennial convention, of course, and as a committee and subcommittee liaison. And then there's the regional chapter coordinating chair, the one that oversees all of the regional chapter coordinators. They have a really important role. That as chair, you would foster the chapter health by working with regional coordinators. You would report to and serve as a voting member on the board of directors. So you're actually in there on the board of directors, understanding the business and contributing to the business of the board. You would serve as liaison between the board, the Sigma staff, and the regional chapter coordinating committee members. So you have a really important role, liaison between the board, the staff, and the Regional Coordinators Committee. And you would be expected to support the vision and goals of the Regional Chapter Coordinating Committee. You would provide leadership to support, enhance, and advance the development of regional leaders and chapters. You would work with the regional coordinators to set the regional priorities, strategic plans and programs, and lead the conference calls on regional trends and best practices. You would be expected to cooperate with Sigma staff to plan the committee calls and to monitor and evaluate the chapter health and make recommendations to the board as appropriate. And the chair would the chair obviously chairs the committees and committees for the award of for award selection as needed. And I think it's really important to consider, although it's not a requirement as regional coordinator chair to be a regional coordinator previously, but I would say it was a distinct advantage so that you would understand the business of the regional coordinators. There are quite a number of non-board leadership positions, which I would strongly advise you to put your names forward to, depending on your experience. That you can apply for a position as a member of the Leadership Succession Committee, and I'm fairly new to that committee, but I have learned a whole lot about leadership within the organisation, and there's 10 members that are elected to that committee. Governance Committee, there are 7 members, and I certainly started off as a member of the Governance Committee, and as a new member of Sigma, I really did learn the whole of the understanding of the bylaws and the legal aspects of the society. And then there's the regional chapters chapter coordinator role that you would be applying for, and there are 22 of those. So if we start with the Leadership Succession Committee, so as a member of the Leadership Succession Committee, Gwen and I, the whole purpose of the committee is to prepare a diverse biennial ballot reflective of the global membership of the society and to develop members in organisational leadership roles. So a really key role to play in the society. I strongly advise you to put your names forward for that. It's an excellent committee. So there are 10 members on the committee, made up of 3 members from the previous biennium, and we'll be looking for 3 members for a 4-year term and 4 members for a 2-year term. The Leadership Succession Committee, the business, develops members and leadership roles, selects nominees, and prepares the biennial ballot. We had a huge number putting themselves forward last year, so we have to sift through those and look to make sure that everybody is electable and goes through the process of shortlisting, etc. So we would educate members about the elected leadership opportunities, as in the webinars. We would mentor members to assume elected leadership positions, those who would require them or would want to be mentored. We prepare the membership materials for nominations, like this PowerPoint presentation, and we assess the expertise and skill levels of individuals nominated for office. We would review, amend, and monitor the campaign procedures and events at convention, and serve as a resource during delegate and convention briefings. The Governance Committee, as I said previously, oversees the bylaws, the chapter development and eligibility issues. So anybody putting themselves forward, any countries outside of North America putting themselves forward to be a new chapter, or within North America applying for chapter status, we would go through the process, the applications. We would, on the Governance Committee, look at proposals to change any proposals to change the bylaws, to oversee issues of member and chapter eligibility, and to review submitted chapter bylaws each biennium to ensure compliance. There are 7 members, as I said earlier, 2 from the previous biennium, and 2 members for a 4-year term and 3 for a 2-year term. And then there's the regional coordinators, who make up the regional chapters coordinating committee. And this is a picture of the current regional coordinators. And they provide the leadership that establishes and maintains the networks for communication and sharing among their regional chapters and committee members. And I'm sure those of you who contribute or participating today will know your regional coordinator, know the good work and hard work that they do throughout the 2 years. The coordinator reports to the committee and serves as a vital and effective member to the regional chapter's coordinating committee. The coordinator provides an aggregate voice for chapter developments within the region and enacts the strategic plan to achieve success. The expectations of the regional coordinator is to support the individual chapters according to the regional needs and circumstance. The regional coordinator would work collaboratively with Sigma headquarters staff and participate in the orientation meeting in Indianapolis in early 2022. So you would be expected as a regional coordinator to attend one meeting in the biennium in Indianapolis, and you'd be supported to do this. You would be expected to participate in leadership or research conferences and other related events in the designated region, and attend the biennial convention, including the House of Delegates session. And then I think it's, oh no, sorry, the time commitment for non-board elected members. I'm sure you must be wondering just how long these roles would take up when you're undertaking a full-time job at the same time. So the regional chapter coordinating committee, the chapter the regional coordinators would undertake, you'd be applying or being nominated for a 2-year term. You can be re-elected for an additional term. And your contribution would be participating in the regional chapter coordinating committee calls, plus quarterly calls with chapter leaders as and when is needed. As a member of the governance committee, would be 7 members serving 2 or 4-year staggered terms, and there are throughout the 2 years about 18 calls. Often it's only 60 minutes, but sometimes when there's an extensive business, they would be extended to 90 minutes. But you have to set aside 90 minutes for each call, just in case. You would also be responsible, some of you, involved in subcommittees to examine eligibility criteria and bylaws, reviews, etc. Not everybody would necessarily be involved in that, but you may well be asked to do that. And the Leadership Succession Committee, 10 members serving 2 and 4 years staggered terms. And there are about 14 conference calls, again, 60 to 90 minutes throughout the biennium, the 2 years. And there's slightly more intensity in the second year as we come to finalise the ballot. And then the standards and guidelines for all elected leaders. This is just a kind of aide-memoire. So you would be expected to follow through on assignments and meet the timeline. So you would need to take this your role seriously in terms of stepping into one of these positions, and you would be expected to make objective decisions based on the organizational purpose, mission, and interests. Not your own interests, of course, but the interests of the society, and expected to evaluate issues affecting Sigma and nursing. You should, applying for such a job, such a role, be expected to see the bigger picture. You would be expected to consider the driving and the restraining forces that that affect Sigma in Sigma's future. So it is about, future gazing, looking at where Sigma fits within the global picture. You'd be expected to adhere to ethical standards and refrain from using elected service for your own personal benefit, or indeed for the benefits of others, and of course maintain confidentiality. And I think this is over to you now, Gwen.
Okay. So having heard some details about how we go about preparing the ballot and the opportunities on the ballot, it's time for you to ask this question. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready to get on the pathway to leadership? So some things that we have thought about that as people begin to think, and sometimes you do need to plan long term to begin to think about how you might be prepared to be nominated. So some suggestions that we would have is, first of all, lead locally. Invite friends to chapter meetings, volunteer to lead a project, and be willing to serve. So first of all is becoming active in your local chapter and really showing your support for the local chapter and being able to serve. Just want to say one aside here. I remember when Beth Tiggis became president, and in her presidential address, she talked about her first activity in Sigma was being the person who got to the meeting early to set up the chairs. So there are so many ways that you can serve. So be willing to volunteer, to step up and be fully engaged, contribute, and demonstrate initiative. Find a mentor, be a mentor. We can help other new members. So find ways to be involved with those who are being inducted, whether it's a community leader or a new graduate. How can you mentor new members? And when you need to be a mentor, perhaps you're looking at serving as chapter treasurer. So offer to assist with the current treasurer so that they can mentor you to then be prepared to participate in that particular role. So look at how you can learn the various roles and mentor and be mentored. Engage to connect, build a network, be part of the network, how you can reach across from your chapter to other chapters. I talk about, I have Sigma friends. I have, over the course of, I can now talk in terms of decades because I'm now in an emeritus role, but across the decades, I have become really friends with people from across the world. We all look forward to seeing each other and connecting at the biennial conventions at the Research Congress each summer. So think about how you can begin to build a network across Sigma. Get on the path. So think about what it is that you want to contribute to Sigma and a broader connection. Think about what are your goals, what are your skills, what are you really good, let's just say, what are you good at doing, and then see how that fits the organizational mission and vision and what you are ready and how can you develop. If you're not quite sure, reach out to someone on the leadership succession committee or reach out to someone who has served in one of these leadership positions and get more information. So some next steps. Here's what you can expect to be happening. We need your help in preparing the ballot, and we have had the list open since the last biennium. We have been collecting names of potential candidates. Bobby Arnold at Sigma, who is on this call, maintains that list. Here is her email. It's a very simple one, Bobby with an I at sigmanursing.org. And we will be collecting names through the 30th of November. We already have more than 100. Last time we had around 400 names submitted. And then the Leadership Succession Committee will begin the process of review. We will make sure that those who are nominated meet the basic criteria. And sometime immediately after November the 30th, the actual application will go out. So right now, this is not an application. This is collecting names. An application will go out whereby we will collect some biographic information. We will be asking you for information on what kinds of leadership positions in Sigma and outside Sigma. So we are also looking for people who have honed leadership skills and other organizations that you might be able to translate some of your skills into helping to lead Sigma. The application process will be from around December 1st till, I'm just going to say January 1st. It might be a little into January, but that's the approximate time that we will be accepting the applications. We will review every application that is submitted, and we will then select the people who will be interviewed by an LSC committee member. Those interviews will take place probably March and April. We will be making decisions for the ballot in May, and our report will go to the board of directors for their June meeting. The ballot is prepared by the LSC, but it is ratified by the board of directors. The board of directors does not select the candidates. The LSC does work independently, but we submit that report to the board of directors to be ratified. Once we have their approval, candidates are notified. So you can see this is a fairly long process because we're such a big organization. And because of our goal for diversity, we want to make sure the word is out there, that everyone has the opportunity, that we are transparent, that you know what the process is. So candidates are notified in June and then have June and July and maybe into August to be able to prepare their candidate materials because we need to have the House of Delegate materials prepared and have that released by the end of September, first part of October. Because whether the convention is virtual or in person, of course, we can't say yet. We're hopeful for in person. But we will need all of those materials to be ready and sent out to the House of Delegates. So we do have some time now that we can look at chat and questions to be able to answer more specific information. Elizabeth and I are both here, and we look forward to being able to explore what your questions are. And let's see, Bobby, can you help, and Noel, can you help us to get into the chat questions? Do we have some questions? I'm not seeing them just yet.
I do see there are some questions. I can read them aloud to you if you'd like, or if you want to look for them, that's fine, but I'm also happy to read them.
Okay. Okay, I don't see how I am able to actually see the questions. So maybe if you read them to us, Noel.
Sure, yeah. So the first one is, how do you decide if you've had experiences that qualify for more than one role?
Oh, that is a great question. And that is something that I would like to address. Right now, you do not have to declare which role you're interested in. We are simply names for the ballot. It's okay for you to specify the role. When you fill out the application, excuse me, there is a place where you will say which role you are interested in. Excuse me. But you will also be able to check that you are also interested in other positions. And so you can specify at that time. So we will also, when we interview people, we will say, we are interviewing you for vice president, but we notice that you are also willing to serve on the board of directors or on the leadership succession committee. And so if there are questions that are unique to those other positions, we will cover those. I'm getting a lot of feedback noise. I don't know if anyone else is. That's making it very hard for me to hear.
I am not getting that. Is it, Elizabeth,
Okay.
are you?
No, I'm all right. I'm okay at this end.
Okay, it stopped now.
Oh,
So,
good.
Right.
yeah,
Who knows with technology these days?
yeah.
Okay, and there was one other question that's come through so far, and it says, what about when there are no chapters or no other members in your country? So perhaps this is a member that has joined a chapter outside of his country.
Okay, so perhaps you are a member of a chapter in another country, or maybe you are in our virtual chapter. We still want you to consider a leadership position. And so, whatever chapter you are a part of, you might talk with the chapter leadership, their board of directors, about whether they might support you in going forth. It is not necessary, but I can tell you that when you get to convention, it's a very busy time when you are a candidate, and there are many sessions that you need to be a part of as a candidate. And I have personally found it helpful when I have felt like I had my chapter support. But don't let that deter you from being nominated. I know Elizabeth, as a member of the European region, where there are chapters, or where we have many members who don't have a chapter in their country. Is there anything you would like to add to that?
Well, as you say, Gwen, every member will be a member of a chapter, irrespective of whether that's in your own country or not. And so, you are presumably in liaison with that chapter. As Gwen says, you don't have to be a member, you don't have to have you or seek support from your chapter, but actually it's good for you to, as you're starting off, to be an active member of that chapter, so that you'll understand at the local level or regional level then what might be expected of you at a more central level, overseeing the whole of the organization. So I would just advocate you being an active member of your local chapter, however local that might be. But as Gwen says, you don't need to have their support going forward. You just apply on your own merits.
In this era, with having to have so many meetings now held virtually, I think it has helped all of us to better understand how we can be active virtually. We have had a virtual chapter for many years. I think the first one was started back when I was on the board of directors as vice president. And I think it's helped all of us to be more innovative and opening up ways for people to be engaged virtually. So there's a lot that you can do to engage with your chapter through virtual means.
And actually now with Zoom and having people's pictures, you become much closer to people than just as previously. When I first started on the board, for example, the committee meetings out with the face-to-face meetings were telephone calls, and you didn't see people. It was quite anonymous, really. But actually now everything is done via Zoom, or a medium that you can actually see people and feel as if you're in the room beside them. So it's much more personable.
And you have a virtual name tag that attaches to your picture. So you can attach face and name. Are there some other questions?
Yeah, one additional question is, how many years of experience do you need to have to be considered for a board of directors position?
There is no definite answer to that question. You need the sufficient experience in leadership, whether it is in Sigma or other organizations. We have actually had some seasoned leaders who have been elected to the board of directors who are in fairly new chapters, because we are opening chapters around the world. And so many countries have fairly new chapters, but they have people who are active in those chapters who have been country leaders, who maybe have served as the chief nurse of that country, or they've served as president of another organization, or on the board of directors of a national organization. So there's not a definite answer. It's really looking at your leadership profile and the information that you provide. So remember, when you fill out the application, you really are, I'm going to use the word selling yourself. You are introducing yourself to the committee so that we can know you and know what your strengths are and what you have done. So it's not just holding the leadership position, but what did you accomplish as a leader? And so you might have been chair of the Leadership Succession Committee, but for your local chapter, but you put in a mentoring, you implemented a mentoring plan, or you implemented some other innovation. And it's how you tell us about that that we are able to see your initiative, your motivation, and how you are willing to step out and take risk and being a leader. Elizabeth, you want to add?
Yeah, I do want to add, actually. I would certainly endorse what you say, Gwen, absolutely. However, being a member in Europe, for example, where there are no years of culture of Sigma. Sigma is a fairly new phenomenon, if you like, and I think that's the case in some of the other regions outside of North America. Obviously, Sigma is nearly 100 years old in North America, but it's certainly fairly new outside of North America in some regions. And therefore, I would advocate it to make your life easier as a member on the board of directors. You would do well to apply for a role on, for example, the governance committee, to understand this whole language of Sigma, the bylaws, the policies, the mechanisms that I was not familiar with, I have to say, and what governance means in terms of Sigma, because clearly the board have oversight of the entire organization and have understanding of every aspect of the society, and it would be to your advantage if you were to have been on the governance committee, for example, or indeed one of the other committees, to understand about the standing committees, about the task groups, etc., because then you go into the board with a really good overview of the society, and therefore are able to make an active contribution to the work of the board. So of course, as a leader in your own country, you are eligible to apply for to be a member on the board of directors, but it makes your life a lot easier, or indeed it made my life a lot easier, having served 4 years on the governance committee, understanding all of this, the bylaws and workings of the society underneath. And I felt well placed and ready to apply for the appointment on the board of directors. So not a criteria, but it isn't. And you need to make life easy for yourself and helpful to be able to make your mark. Because as Gwen says, it's not just being a member, it's actually being a valued member, a member who is able to make a difference.
And we benefit from all kinds of diversity. So we benefit from those who have been members of Sigma for decades and can bring some historical memory. But we also benefit when we have fresh voices who that comes from newer members. So we are looking at diversity in that regard too. Do we have some other questions?
We do, yeah. So another one is the application available to review prior to submitting one's name to understand the specific knowledge, skills, competencies, and experience that will be reviewed?
Okay, I'm thinking about the answer to that question. I can I say that I will take that back to the committee? I think that we could publicize that. In the past, it has been we're looking at that process right now, and not yet finalized the application, but our expectation is that or basic biographical information and what you have done for Sigma. Thank you for raising that question.
Great. A few more. How can I find a mentor to help prepare me to serve in an international office?
Very good question. First of all, I would say look around you and see if you know someone who has served in an international position already and talk with them about that. If you don't know anyone, you can contact the LSC, you can contact Bobby, or you can contact Sigma, and we can help find someone who is able to help you. Elizabeth, do you want to add to that?
Well, I think that's true. I think you want to know, it's really helpful to have someone who really understands the role of what that you're thinking of applying for, so that they have inside understand the practicalities, really. I mean, we've displayed all the roles and responsibilities and criteria, etc., but actually you probably want to know what the practicalities are that will help you then to show why Sigma would want you to be a member on those committees, etc.
I want to go back to the previous question on seeing the application. Once the application is posted, you will have almost 2 months that you will see the application, and you will be able to download and look at that application prior to filling it out. So my apology for not being clear about that process. Another question?
Yeah, two more so far. So, can I continue to be a chapter leader if I'm elected for a position on the international board or committee?
Absolutely. It's what your time will allow. The only rule we have is that current members of the Leadership Succession Committee cannot be on the ballot, of course, for conflict of interest. And you may want to think about what your time commitment is, and it's purely what your time allows you to do.
Wonderful. Yeah, and that you kind of addressed the last question we have. It says on the slide, it mentioned that LSC members are not eligible for the ballot. Can you explain this a little bit more?
Yes, so during this biennium, from 2019 to 2021, anyone serving on the LSC cannot put themselves forward to be on the ballot because it would be a conflict of interest in terms of self-promotion. So we just simply made it a rule that during the time you are on the LSC that you can't put yourself forward. Those people who rotated off the LSC in 2019 at the last biennium are eligible this time. And quite frankly, we had some terrific people who rotated off and whose names we are putting in to be considered for the ballot this time. But it's purely for maintaining conflict of interest visions.
All right.
And I would also add here that if you are holding a major office like president or board of directors in another major organization, say, let me think of like the like an international organization, we would not want you to be simultaneously serving on the board of directors of Sigma, again, because of potential conflict of interest. So we are delighted to have people who have served in those positions. But if you are currently, say, president of the National League for Nursing, well, you wouldn't have time to also be on our board of directors. But you also, that would be considered a conflict of interest to serve on the board of directors of 2 major organizations. So just think about that. To just answer in your own mind, do you see a potential conflict of interest? If we are looking for people who are active in other organizations, but you would not want to be on the board of directors of 2 major. If you're unsure, just reach out to someone on the LSC and we can help you determine that.
Wonderful. 2 additional questions have come in. One is asking if we may provide a copy of this presentation, and I believe that a recording of this will be up on the website, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Correct.
Okay, so then the very last question we have time for is, for those individuals who complete the application but are not elected in the end, does Sigma or the LSC have any path to continue to mentor those individuals for other engagement opportunities with the organization?
Oh, thank you for asking that question, because this is something we have not thought to put in the presentation, but I think it is very important. We do, in the end, once we announce the ballot, everyone who went through an interview gets an email that you can seek feedback from an LSC committee member. But actually, it prompts me to think that if you put in an application and you're not selected for an interview, likewise, we can make that opportunity available to talk with a member of the LSC. The way we did it last time, whoever was your interviewer then provided, you had the opportunity to get feedback from that person in a phone call. And so we can also offer feedback to those people who put in an application but are not selected for an interview, because I think that might be part of our mentoring process in terms of helping so that the next biennium you are better prepared for completing the application. So I really appreciate that question, because I think it's a very valuable question.
Great, and those are all the questions that we had, so we ended with a great one. Thank you both today for your time and presentation.
There are going to be 3 more webinars with different members of the LSC, and we will be posting the recordings. So thank you all so very much. It was a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, thank you for me too. So, and good luck with your nominations.